This police officer from the future has gone through a portal while trying to stop some dangerous terrorists, but she is not aware that she has traveled 60 years in the past. The year is 2077, and a man named Edward Kagame sits down to deliver a speech that is broadcast around the world. In the speech, he mentions that 20 years ago, as the governments of the world were failing, they were bailed out by large corporations. While initially it was advertised as salvation, it quickly became a dictatorship, which removed all freedom, democratic rights, and liberties of the people. Edward says that they have awakened to this reality, and they will not stop until they have regained all their liberties from the hands of the corporate Congress. Just then, his speech is interrupted by the law enforcement authority known as the City Protection Service, or CPS. Among the CPS officers is Kira Cameron. The officers inform Edward that he is being placed under arrest for being the leader of the terrorist organization known as Liberate. However, as they are taking him away, he tells them that they are too late, and behind him, a bomb explodes, collapsing two massive skyscrapers. 6 months later, Kira is hosting some friends at her place, and they are discussing this event. It is revealed that Liberate destroyed those two skyscrapers to kill 20 important corporate heads who were in the towers at the time. Most of Kira's friends think it's horrible that Liberate was willing to kill thousands of innocents just to get to their 20 targets. But one of them understands their fight. He says that they need the return of democracy and actual civil representation as opposed to a corporate dictatorship. Just then, Liberate logos start displaying all over the news and internet, and Kira assumes it is a scare tactic because today is the day that the arrested Liberate leaders are going to get executed. She is called into duty for this event. As Kira and her husband Greg ride the train, she spots two young men who are suspects in a crime, and puts on a display of her incredible training as she incapacitates and arrests them. Kira arrives at work and is stationed right in the execution chamber. Greg is in the crowd sitting with one of the few corporate heads still alive, who seems to be against the idea of a public execution. As the execution is taking place, Greg notices that the guards putting handcuffs on the Liberate leaders are giving them something, and it comes to Kira's attention as well. She rushes forward to stop them, and just then, all the Liberate leaders throw a piece of some machine into the central beam of energy in front of them, and the pieces combine to open a portal. The portal transports Liberate leaders Kira and her partner Elena out of there. The corporate head in the crowd seems pleased at this turn of events. Next, Kira awakens under a destroyed bridge and spots the Liberate leader Ingram making a run for it. She pulls out her high-tech gun, but it doesn't work. Ingram reads a local newspaper which reveals that they have all arrived in 2012, 65 years in the past, which means that the parts the Liberate leaders were handed were of a time machine. Kira, unaware that she is in 2012, tries to radio her office for backup, but on her frequency, she gets in touch with a programmer named Alec. Alec is surprised that she can contact him because he is on an experimental frequency of his own discovery, and he has yet to put out the tech that can access this frequency. Kira manages to catch Ingram, and she gives him a truth serum to find out what is happening. He reveals that they have time-jumped 65 years in the past to escape their execution. A police car arrives, and Kira hands Ingram a weapon so that he looks like a criminal and gets arrested. Meanwhile, the rest of the Liberate leaders break into a military equipment store and stock up on weapons. Alex speaks to Kira and reveals that he heard her conversation with Ingram. He asks her what year she's from, and she says she is from 2077. Kira recognizes him as Alex Sadler, the legendary inventor of the technologies that her department uses. But when Alec questions her more about his future, she oddly refuses to tell him anything. Alec suggests that they meet up in person, but Kira is not in favor of it. She shuts him out, but since her receiver is implanted in her brain, he manages to hack back into it. He says that he knows she won't meet him because she is worried about altering the future by interacting with the past. But that ship sailed when she first got here. He hacks into her visual cortex to see what she looks like, and she warns him to stop perving on her. Next, Kira reveals that all her memories from a particular day are recorded and saved in case they need to be presented during a trial. As she goes through her memories from today, Alec watches them and gets to know about her life. He also sees in her memories a logo on a building that looks exactly like the logo that he is currently working on for his company. Hence, he now knows his technologies will be a huge deal in the future. The next day, Kira arrives at the site of the destroyed bridge, where Detective Carlos observes her. He approaches her, and she asks him if someone brought in a man in an orange jumpsuit from around this area yesterday. He confirms that they did, but they can't get any DNA matches on the man and he won't reveal his name. She tells Carlos that the man's name is Ingram, and Carlos becomes curious as to who she is. She pretends to be a detective named Linda Williams out of Portland, Oregon, because she saw one on the news earlier, and he agrees to take her to meet Ingram, if she can get him to talk. Kira asks to speak with Ingram by herself, and once Carlos is gone, she demands to know how she can get back to 2077. Ingram makes it clear that the time travel is a one-way ticket, and they are stuck here. He suggests that she use the knowledge she has of the past, invest in stocks, and build a comfortable life for herself, but she instead demands to know what Liberate's plan is now. He refuses to tell her, and she blackmails him by getting Alec to dig up the address of his grandmother who is alive right now. She threatens to pay her a visit if Ingram won't talk, and he gives up. However, before he can speak, Carlos says that his boss wants to speak to Kira. Kira makes up a story for Carlos' boss that Liberate is a gang out of Portland, and then gives him details of how they operate and how to catch them. Just then, calls start coming in from all over the city about banks being robbed, but Kira says that only one bank is being robbed, and the rest of the alarms are just being used as distractions. Kira and Carlos arrive at the bank and engage in a shootout with Liberate. Carlos refuses to give Kira a weapon since she has no jurisdiction here, so she uses her high-tech suit to fight the Liberate members as she follows them into an abandoned building. Her suit is revealed to be bulletproof and capable of delivering electrical shocks. Just when it looks like the Liberate members are becoming too much for her to handle, Carlos arrives to rescue her, and the Liberate members retreat. Kira notices that all the Liberate leaders weren't at the bank, and she theorizes that this whole thing was a distraction to break Ingram out. She and Carlos return to the police station, and her theory is proven correct. Carlos' boss says that Kira clearly knows how this gang works, so they need her on this case. Tensions rise between Kira and Carlos because she didn't stay out of the conflict when he told her to at the bank. Afterward, Kira speaks with Alec and theorizes that by traveling to the past, Liberate might try to get a head start on the war against the corporations, and she must stop them. Alec tries to get to know about his future again, but Kira cryptically says that she's not sure if telling him is a good idea. Then, a flashback of hers reveals that Alec is the younger version of the corporate head that sat next to Greg during the execution. Next, Ingram prepares to take the Liberate leaders back to their time. He needs a lot of power to run the time travel device, so they decide to head for the city's main power grid. One of Liberate leaders named Matthew Kellogg argues that they can fight against the corporations much better from this time. They can stop them from ever coming in power. The rest of them don't agree. Matthew decides to stay behind by himself. Kira arrives at the station, and her cover is blown as a detective from Portland PD arrives and reveals that he works with the real Linda Williams. Carlos asks Kira to tell him the truth, but when she sticks to her story, he decides to process her. Kira asks Alec to figure out a way to build a fake identity for her and get it into the national directory. She tells him it doesn't have to be perfect. It just has to give the police something to chase after for a while. Meanwhile, Carlos' boss theorizes that Kira is part of the gang they are hunting down. Carlos says his gut is telling him something else, but his boss isn't very interested in what his guy has to say. The Liberate leaders arrive at the main power station, and as they try to run the time travel device, the power goes out in more than half of the city. At that very moment, Kira and Carlos are in an elevator, and they get stuck. Carlos receives radio communication that criminal activity has been spotted near the main power station, and Kira deduces that Liberate is involved. With the help of Alec, her suspicions are confirmed. She knocks Carlos out by shocking him, however. Before leaving, she tells him that while her actions might not make sense to him, she can't do what she has to do without his help. It's not evident by his face how much of that he understands. Kira breaks into a car and arrives at the scene of the crime. She learns that some people matching the description of the Liberate leaders have been seen recently, which means their time-traveling attempt has failed. However, the officers at the scene of the crime look at her suspiciously, and she decides to leave. Kira tells Alec that Liberate will continue to look for another power source. Alec informs her that a scientist named Simon Fraser has recently published a paper about the theoretical possibility of a fusion-based power source so potent that it may allow for travel through space faster than the speed of light. This may be the kind of power source that Liberate will go for next. Kira says she needs to find Simon immediately, but Liberate beats her to it. Carlos is informed by his coworker that someone recently hacked into Portland PD's database, and this might be a lead in figuring out Linda's true identity. Meanwhile, Kira arrives at Simon's house, and his wife tells her that some people kidnapped him and took him to the linear collider at the university. Realizing she might need backup, Kira tips off Carlos about the current location of Liberate. At the university, Ingram places the time travel device in the linear collider to harness the energy of colliding particles. As Kira heads towards them, she tells Alec that she doesn't intend to stop them. She intends to join them and head back to her own time and deal with them there. Alec bids her farewell. Kira sneaks up behind Liberate and takes one of them hostage. She proposes terms for a ceasefire until they are all back in their own time, which include letting Simon go and her hunting them down as soon as they are back. They agree. The device powers up and glows, but then it malfunctions and they are all thrown back. Realizing that none of them are going back now, Kira ends the truce and starts hunting them. Carlos and the police arrive as well, and a shootout begins. As the Liberate leaders are hurrying to leave, Ingram forgets one piece of the time travel device. After they leave, Carlos spots Kira, and she is placed under arrest. While Carlos is taking her to his car, Simon vouches for her, saying that she is not one of the criminals. She saved his life. Kira is processed at the police station, but when they run her prints, they find top-secret FBI files with most of the information redacted, revealing that she's an undercover agent. It is revealed that Alec has created this cover for her because it doesn't allow the police to ask too many questions. Kira cries as she confronts the possibility that she may never see her son and husband again. Carlos' boss arrives and apologizes to Kira for the way he's treated her because he didn't know she was a federal agent. He says that someone with her contacts and skills would be very useful in the case against Liberate, and requests that she join a new task force he is creating. She agrees, and he assigns Carlos to be her partner. As he helps Kira get settled in, Carlos makes a cryptic comment which suggests that he still doesn't believe she's told them the truth. While speaking to him, Kira notices that a piece of evidence being brought in is actually one of the pieces of the time machine. Afterward, Kira discusses with Alec that she may never see her son and husband again, so she needs to find some meaning here. She needs to somehow believe that what she does here will help better the lives of her family in the future. Alec empathizes with her and cheers her up. Continuum is a 2012 Canadian TV series that ran for 4 seasons till 2015. The show received majorly positive reviews from audiences and critics alike. However, while it was liked by many, the show never managed to gather a large enough audience to justify running for many more seasons. It was canceled after Season 3, and was only allowed 6 episodes in Season 4 to wrap up the storyline. Thank you for watching. Be sure to like our channel and subscribe if you enjoy content like this. Also, let us know what movie you would love us to recap for you.